Hey guys, wanted to throw together a video for you on a couple different tools that we've been using with Postgres. I know that we haven't covered these in depth in class, so I just wanted to go over a couple of them. I'm not going to focus on the backend setup or front end or anything in React. This is only just to get a Postgres environment set up and go over how to connect to it and how to create different databases. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to download Postgres app. The link for this is postgresapp.com. I'm going to go to downloads and I'm going to go ahead and get that download started. I'm going to download two other tools. I'm going to download a tool called pSQL, and I'm going to go ahead and download that. And I'm going to download one other tool called pgadmin. So I'm going to go to the download page on that. I'm going to grab it for Mac OS. I'm going to grab the latest version, and they're going to take me to a page that's going to let me download the files. I hate it when open source projects do this. They make it confusing as to what you're supposed to download. The size of the file is a big giveaway. So what I want to download is this version right there. Okay, so while that goes ahead and downloads, we're going to start with the Postgres app. So we're going to go ahead and open that. What this app is going to do for us is set us up for being able to connect to the server. So while we could use Docker for this, and there's definitely times to use Docker, this is just a shortcut to get started. So I drug that to my applications folder. I'm going to now go ahead and find it and open it up. And I'm going to hit open and it says not running. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start. And it's going to start up by default a database with my name on it. So Postgres is only running one server, but within that server, we can have as many different databases as we want. So you can see here that I had one already created called auth, and template one may have come with Postgres. But it's a good idea to have a different database for every server that you have, or every project that you have set up. So what if we want to go ahead and look and see what's inside of this database? Well, I can double click on it and it's going to open up a terminal for me, which I can run SQL commands in. However, I don't want to run SQL commands. I want to have a UI for being able to look into the database. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And instead, I'm going to open up the pSQL app that I had downloaded. And I'm going to drag that to my applications folder. And then I'm going to go ahead and open that app. So I'm going to open up pSQL. I'm going to hit open. And what pSQL is going to do is it's going to say, if it ever opens, there we go. How do we want to connect to the server? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete these out, which I already had in there. And I'm going to say, okay, I want to add a connection and we'll call this username DB. And it's going to say, all right, where do you want to connect? Localhost is fine and port 5432 is fine. And how do I know that's fine? Because if I go to the postgres.app documentation, it shows me that by default, I have my server, my Postgres server running on localhost port 5432, and my username and database name are both my Mac username. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in my username here. I'm going to leave the password blank, and the database name is also Max Matthews. So when I connect to that, I can see that I already have a users table in here. Now, by default, when you do your setup, of course, there will be no table in here. Okay, so that's great. What if we want to create another database? So the easy way of doing it without having to install any more tools is to go back to the Postgres app and double click on the database that I have by default. That's going to open me up into a terminal shell that I can execute SQL commands. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to Google Postgres create database. And the first link I'm going to get is this Postgres documentation. And they're going to show me that I can run a command called create database. And let me blow that font up for you guys so you can see that. Okay, and what I'm going to do is give it a name. So I'm just going to give it a name, video tutorial. And I'm going to say with owner equal to Max Matthews. So what I'm going to do is basically assign the user account that Postgres already created for me into that command. So I'm going to hopefully run that, and it returns back create database. So when I go into Postgres, we see that there is now a new a new database called video tutorial here. So to confirm all of this is working, I'm going to go ahead and terminate this terminal shell. That's not shutting down my server, that's just closing this window. And I'm going to pop open a project that we already have that has our model set up here. So what Sequelize is doing here is it's saying, hey, what's the database name, what's the username, and what's the password? And because we're running on local, we don't need a password. You could set it up to have a password on your database, but because no one can really connect in, it doesn't matter that much. And then we have our host. Where is our server running and what is the kind of the server? So if I change this off to what the new database name I just created, I can save that and I'm going to start up my server. So I'm going to just run, I'm going to cd to my backend and I'm going to run nodemon, and it spins up and it says, okay, Sequelize connection error, database video tutorial does not exist. Okay, so the reason for that is I called it video tutorial with a lowercase t. So let's fix that. It's going to reboot and it's going to run some SQL. Okay, well, how do I know that my Sequelize is talking to my database? Well, what I can do is I can go into the pSQL app. I'm going to go ahead and close out what I had and open up a new window. And instead of connecting to the Max Matthews database, I'm going to instead connect to video tutorial. And I can connect in there, and now I can see my users table. Okay, so for the most part, we can stop here. If we want to continue, however, the extra credit step is using pgadmin. And this is a web interface that will let you work with your database and kind of get into the nitty-gritty. A lot of this stuff that you can do directly in your Sequelize code. But if you want to get into the database and kind of see what's happening under the hood, pgadmin can be a really great tool. So I downloaded that earlier. I'm going to go ahead and open that DMG. I'm going to hit agree. And eventually that should open up. I'm going to double click on that here. And it's going to go through this long verification process. Okay, so once we finish that long verification process, we're going to double click on it here. We might get a pop-up. If you want to open it, we're going to go ahead and say yes. And then it's going to boot up the server for us. And when it boots up, it should open a new Chrome tab for us. Okay, it might prompt you here to create a new master password. Because I have used pgadmin before, it's going to ask me what my master password is. I would advise you to set that to whatever your Mac password is, so you can keep it all in memory. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this Add New Server here. Now, we can just call this server Postgres app, maybe. It doesn't really matter what we call it. What matters is when we go to this connection tab, it's going to say, where should I look for this server? So I'm going to tell it, hey, that server is on localhost. And we also are going to tell it, hey, our username is Max Matthews, whatever your Mac username is. Again, that's going to match whatever the Postgres app tells you. Notice we aren't telling it what the name of the databases are that we created, because all we're doing is getting pgadmin to connect to the server, and then once we're connected to the servers, then we can operate in with the databases that are on that server. So we're going to go ahead and hit save. And over here on the left, we now see that we have all of these databases over here that I created. Now that we have our database server connected in here, what we can do is we can right-click create, and we can make a new database. So I'm just going to call this one video tutorial 2. And we want to make sure that I'm the owner so I can connect into it. And I'm going to hit save. And we're going to see that that is created in here. Now, if we wanted to, we could get fancy and run some SQL right in our pgadmin. So we could do something like opening up our database here and looking in the schemas. And in the schemas, we have a bunch of views. And we also have a bunch of tables. So in our tables, we can click through on the columns and look at the drop down here and see all of our fields are created. So pgadmin is a really advanced tool, but again, this is kind of if you want to do a deep dive into the database and see what's running and the efficiency of it and kind of get into the nitty-gritty. However, for the most part, you could just get away with using Postgres app and the pSQL app as well. Again, these are just tools. These are mix and match however you want. So I hope this helps you guys become a little bit more comfortable with Postgres.